Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Radha and Mataji, when are you ready? You can start, Mataji.
Krishna Prabhuji. Hare Krishna to all dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrutyam Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 31. Narada instructed the Pracetas. Text 1. The great saint Maitreya continued. After that, the Pracetas lived at home for the thousands of years and developed the perfect knowledge in spiritual consciousness. At last, they remembered the blessings of the spiritual supreme personality of Godhead and left home, putting their wives in charge of a perfect son. Text 2. The Pracetas went to the seashore in the west, where the great liberated sage Jali was resided. After perfecting the spiritual knowledge by which one becomes equal towards all living entities. The Prachitas became perfect in Krishna consciousness. Text 3. After practicing the Yogasana for mystic yoga, the Prachitas managed to control their life, air, mind, words, and eternal vision. Thus, by the pranayam process, they were completely revealed of the material attachments. By remaining perpendicular, they could concentrate their minds on the uppermost Brahman while they were practicing this pranayam. The great sage Narada, who is worshipped both by the demons and by the demigods, came to see them. Text 4. As soon as the Prachitas saw that the great sage Narada had appeared, they immediately got up, even from their asanas. As required, they immediately offered obeisances and worshipped him. And when they saw that Narada Muni was properly seated, they began to ask him questions. Text 5. All the Prachitas began to address the great sage Narada. O great sage, O Brahmana, we hope you met we hope you met with no disturbances while coming here. It is due to our great fortune that we are now able to see you. By the traveling of the sun, people are revealed from the fear of the darkness of night. A fear brought about by the thieves and rogues. Similarly, your traveling is like the suns for you. For the suns for you drive away all kinds of fears. Text 6. O Master, may we inform you that because of your being overly attracted to the family affairs, we almost forgot the instructions we received from the Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu. Text 7. Dear Master, kindly enlighten us in the transcendental knowledge which may act as a torchlight by which we may cross the dark signs of the material existence. Text 8. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, being thus petitioned by the Prachitas, the supreme devotee Narada, who is always absorbed in thoughts of the supreme personality of Godhead, began to reply. Text 9. The great sage Narada said, when a living entity is born to engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Controller, his birth, all his fruitive activities, his lifespan, his mind, and his words all are factually perfect. Text 10. A civilized human being has three kinds of birth. The first birth is by a pure father and mother, and this birth is called the birth by the semen. The next birth takes place when one is initiated by the spiritual master, and this birth is called Savitra. The third birth called Ya, Yajnika take place when one is given the opportunity to worship Lord Vishnu. Despite the opportunities for attaining such birth, even if one gets the lifespan of a demigod, if one does not actually engage in the service of the Lord, everything is useless. Similarly, one's activities may be mundane or the spiritual, but they are useless if they are not meant for the satisfying the Lord. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Radharan Mati. Hare Krishna. Yeah, Achuta Mati, whenever you're ready, you can start Mati.
Start with prayers. ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुन्मिलितमेन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदामयं ददाति सुपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवं श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगुणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सौन्दर्यलता शिवशाकं नमामि विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you Radharani Mataji for reading the verses. I'll share my screen here. Sorry, one second. So So we are continuing our discussion of the Pracetas, and so I found some nice images on the internet, and like I just thought of showing them here. So here Maitreya Muni is narrating the story of the Pracetas to Vidur, and then how the Pracetas they were performing austerities under the water, and then and then they came out, and then Lord Brahma he appeared, and then the trees offered their daughter Marisha to the Pracetas. So they got married to Marisha, and then they did their household um, uh, responsibilities for thousands of years, and then after that they remembered the instructions of the Lord, and also the instructions of Lord and the prayers of Lord Shiva that they recited earlier, and they renounced everything, and then they went to the forest, and that's where they met Narad Muni. So this is the meeting of Narad Muni is what we'll be discussing today, and how it's linked from the previous chapter is the Lord in 430 18th verse, he told the Pracetas that that they will become disgusted with their kingdom, and how they will attain him. So basically that prediction has come true in this chapter. The Pracetas detach themselves from the kingdom and leave for the forest, and they perform bhakti, devotional service, and which is prescribed by Narad Muni. So Narad Muni acts as their he becomes their spiritual master, and they practice devotional service that is being mentioned by Narad Muni, and then they attain Lord Krishna. So today's verses are from 1 to 10, and verses 1 to 7 mentions about Pracetas, how they renounce their kingdom and they meet Narada Muni. and how they welcome him. And text 8 to 14, since they are linked together, I just put them together. But today we won't be covering until 14, we'll be only covering until 10. But 8 to 14 talks about devotional service is the goal of all spiritual practices. And like again, going deeper in those verses, it's 1 to 2 verses talk about verses 1 and 2 talk about how the Pracetas retire from family life. And verses 3 to 8, Narad Muni arrives and Pracetas request him to enlighten them, and Narad Muni begins to reply. And then verse 9 talks about how one can achieve perfection by bhakti, and all other processes are useless without bhakti in the 10th verse. So that's what we'll be covering today. The first verse says, Maitreya Muni continued that Pracetas who lived at home for thousands of years and they developed perfect knowledge and spiritual consciousness. So, but at last they remembered the blessings of the personality of Godhead and left home, putting their wife in charge of a perfect son. So after finishing their family life, Prabhupada says that, which lasted for thousands of years, according to the calculation of the demigods, the Pracetas, they decided to leave home, and they put their wife Marisha in charge of their son Daksha. So Daksha Prajapati, he is born as the after he was cursed and again punished basically by Lord Shiva. He was born as Daksha again as a son of Prachetas and Marisha. So Prabhupada says that this is the process of Vedic life. Like, in the beginning, like one should undergo like austerities and penances as a brahmachari. And then as a brahmachari, the austerity is basically they're not, like brahmachari is not allowed to mingle with women. They should be engaged in learning scriptures and serve the guru like that. And that's what, and Prabhupada says that this is the basic flaw in modern civilization, is that boys and girls are given freedom during school and college days to mingle together. So most of the children are Varna Sankara, meaning they're born of undesirable fathers and mothers. So that's why the whole world is in chaos. And if the human civilization, if it's like, it should be based on Vedic principles. So basically, everybody, like it's not just for men, but even like women and men, everybody, boys and girls, should undergo penances and austerities, because that becomes as a foundation that the austerity and penances become foundation when they grow up, and then once they are married and have children, then once the children are grown up, then and then we can perfect our life by going back home, back to Godhead. So Prabhupada says that without realizing Krishna, one cannot make his life perfect. And then he says, as soon as the time is right, or as soon as one has developed perfect Krishna consciousness, he should leave home, even though all his duties may not be fulfilled. So Prabhupada says that, one should not, it means that one should not wait. It's not necessary to wait until retirement to leave home, and then trying to perfect one's life. As soon as you feel like, as soon as we feel that we have one has developed perfect Krishna consciousness, and what is that perfect Krishna consciousness is explained in the last verse for today, which is the 10th verse. Then a person can leave home, and even though their duties may not be fulfilled, the household duties may not be fulfilled. So Prachina Parhi, who's the father of the Prachetas, he also did the same thing. So Prachina Parhi was actually, he did not even wait until these Prachetas are older and they could take the responsibility and everything, but he just followed the instructions of, again, Narad Muni was his spiritual master too, and he followed the instructions of the Narad Muni, and he just gave away all his responsibilities to his ministers, and he left instructions for his ministers to impart to his sons, and without waiting, he left home. And Prabhupada says that giving up a comfortable home is absolutely necessary for human beings, and is advised by Prahlad Maharaj also. Prahlad Maharaj says to finish the materialistic way of life, one should leave his so-called comfortable home life, which is simply a means for killing the soul. The home life is considered to be a dark well covered by grass, and if one falls within this well, he simply dies without one's caring. So one should not therefore be too much attached to family life, or it will spoil one's development. So the summary of this verse is how the Pracetas retire. So after living for thousands of years at home in Grihastha life, they finally remembered the Lord's blessings and they left home, and leaving Marisha, their wife, in the care of Daksha, their son. In text 2, says Pracetas went to the seashore in the west, where the great liberated sage Jajali was residing. After perfecting the spiritual knowledge by which one becomes equal towards all living entities, the Pracetas became perfect in Krishna consciousness. So during the brahmachari phase, one has to cultivate the knowledge of the absolute truth. We are supposed to study scriptures. We are supposed to undergo austerities and penances, and the Pracetas executed that perfectly. And they reached the Brahma Bhuta stage. So it says here, consequently, they became equal to all living entities, so which is the Brahma Bhuta stage that is explained in Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter. Brahma Bhuta prasannatmana shojati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhati param. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So that this is like a launch pad. So launch pad state, basically, one has to be on the Brahma Bhuta stage where one sees everybody equally. So one is so advanced that they don't see any difference between one living entity and the other. And Prabhupada says that this platform is attained by determination. When perfect knowledge is expanded, one ceases to see the outward covering of the living entity. So they only see the spirit soul within the body. Same thing. There's another verse in Bhagavad Gita 5th chapter. It says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Kavi Hastini Sunicha Vacha Pakecha Pandita Samadarshana. So humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. So the Pracetas, they reached that stage, and then what to do after reaching that stage is also mentioned here. So after one desiring perfection or liberation should associate with a person who is already liberated. This is called sadhu sangha, associating with a perfect devotee. So the Pracetas, they went to the shore and they practiced spirituality. So they practiced pranayam, etc. And they reached that Brahma Bhuta stage of seeing everybody on equally, all living entities equally. And then they started practicing Krishna consciousness. The next verse says, after practicing the yogasana for mystic yoga, the Pracetas managed to control their life air, mind, words, and external vision. Thus, by the pranayama process, they were completely relieved of material attachment. By remaining perpendicular, they could concentrate their minds on the uppermost Brahman. While they were practicing this pranayam, the great sage Narada, who was worshipped both by demons and the demigods, came to see them. So there are different types of Brahman realization, like impersonal Brahman, or the first stage Brahman, then is localized Paramatma, and then is Bhagavan stage. So in this verse, it says that they could concentrate their minds on the uppermost Brahmans. That means they were concentrating their minds on the personal aspect of the Supreme Lord. So they were not they were not they were not after the Brahma Bhuta stage, they were concentrating on the personal feature of the Lord. Lord Shiva also, in his prayers, Lord Shiva concentrated upon the personal features of Parabrahma, described in personal terms as Snigdha Pravadhana Shyamam. Following the instructions of Lord Shiva, the Pracetas also concentrated their minds on the Shyamasundar form of the Supreme Brahman. So, like we saw in the previous I think couple of chapters ago about how they recited Lord Shiva's prayers, and so they knew that they should be concentrating on the Shyamasundar form of the Lord, and that's what they started doing. Although impersonal Brahman, Paramatma Brahman, and Brahman are the same Supreme Person, are all on the same transcendental platform, the personal feature of the Supreme Brahman is the ultimate goal and the last word in transcendence. So that is the best form of meditation. And then Narad Muni, who basically is like he's the Sura Suredya. That means he's worshipped both by Sura and Asura, by demons as well as demigods. Narad Muni appeared there. So although Prabhupada says, although there is perpetual animosity between demons and demigods, Narad Muni is welcomed everywhere. So Narad Muni is one of the demigods, but he is also Devarshi, that means saintly person amongst the demigods. So a perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narad Muni's, Prabhupada says, completely independent and unbiased. So Narad Muni arrives, and while the Pracetas were practicing pranayam, Narad Muni arrives there, and he starts instructing them. So as soon as, then the next verse, as soon as the Pracetas saw that the great sage Narada had appeared, they immediately got up from their asanas. As required, they immediately offered obeisances and worshipped him. And when they saw that Narad Muni was properly seated, they began to ask him questions. So this is the welcoming of the Pracetas. They offered him asana, and then they inquired from him. Text 5. All the Pracetas began to address the great sage Narada. O great sage, O Brahmana, we hope you met with no disturbances while coming here. It is due to our great fortune that we are not now able to see you. By traveling of the sun, people are relieved from the fear of darkness of night, a fear brought about by thieves and rogues. Similarly, your traveling is like the sun's, for you drive away all kinds of fear. So here it's explained that a pure devotee's presence is like the sunlight. It's like the sun's presence. It drives away all darkness from our lives. So similarly, just like, the thieves and rogues, everybody's afraid of them, but as soon as the sun is out, the thieves and rogues go away. So similarly, this material world is dark by nature. Everyone is afraid of danger at every moment. But when one sees a devotee like Narad, all fear is relieved. And the analogy is given of the sun, how it disperses darkness. The appearance of great sages is like that, like the appearance of the sun, and they disperse all our ignorance. So when one meets Narad Muni or his representative, like a pure devotee or a spiritual master, we become free from all our anxieties and all our ignorance. So they are praying like that. The Pracetas are saying that you're like the Narad Muni, you're like the sun. It is our great fortune to see you. Your moments are like that of a sun, which drives away all fear and it removes the darkness of night. And then in the next verse, text 6. O Master, we may inform you that because of our being overly attached to family affairs, we almost forgot the instructions we received from Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu. So because they were, the Pracetas were in family life for thousands of years, thousands of demigod years, they, excuse me, they were entangled in the responsibilities of household life. So they are saying that we almost forgot the instructions that was given to us by the Lord and Lord Shiva. So here it says, Prabhupada says, I like this statement a lot. It says, one should know that sense enjoyment is not required. So one has to accept sense enjoyment as much as one has to live. So basically, just to keep the body and soul together, whatever is required, we should accept only that much sense enjoyment. We should not be too engrossed and too entangled in that process in the Grihastha life. One has to become a Goswami and control his senses. One should not simply use his senses for sense gratification. Rather, the senses should be employed only as much as required for maintaining the body and soul together. And Jiva Goswami also says, recommends that one should not be attached to sense objects. One should accept sense enjoyment only as much as required and no more. If one wishes to enjoy the senses more than required, he becomes attached to family life, which becomes a bondage. All the Pracetas admitted their fault in remaining in household life. So this family attachment, they're saying that because of our attachment to family affairs, we almost forgot the instructions. So it's very, very dangerous in that sense that, if we are too attached in family life, we may forget the instructions of our spiritual masters. Text 7. Dear Master, kindly enlighten us in transcendental knowledge, which may act as a torchlight by which we may cross the dark nescience of material existence. So Pracetas they're already on a transcendental platform, and they know that they what to ask from Narada Muni. So they're not wasting their time in asking for material boons and material things. They're directly coming straight to the point. That Pracetas, they're saying that we are not interested in material benefit. We have enjoyed all of that, and now we want to. We don't want to. We just want to. Please guide us, basically. Please enlighten us in transcendental knowledge. So they were simply interested in crossing the ocean of nescience. Everybody should be interested in getting out of these material crutches. Everybody should approach a saintly person in order to be enlightened in this connection. So one should not bother a saintly person to get blessings for material enjoyment. Prabhupada says generally householders receive saintly persons to get their blessings, but their real aim is to become happy in this material world. But actually asking for such material benedictions is not recommended in the scriptures. And text 8. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidur, being thus petitioned by the Pracetas, the supreme devotee Narada, who was always absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, began to reply. So here Narad Muni is addressed as Bhagwan Narad. So Prabhupada is talking about that, like, why he's mentioned as Bhagavan, because Bhagavan means one who possesses all opulences. So when one is always thinking about Bhagavan, that person also, he carries the Bhagavan in his heart. So he's also sometimes called as Bhagavan. So similarly, so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says that in every Shastra, the spiritual master is accepted as directly as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, but that does not mean that he is a Supreme Personality of Godhead. So similarly, Narad Muni also, he's called as Bhagwan Narad, but he's not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but because he's carrying the Supreme Lord in his heart, he's always absorbed in his thoughts and he's always chanting his names. So he's referred to as Bhagwan Narad. And then Narad Muni started replying from verse 9. It says, Narad Muni says, when a living entity is born to engage in the devotion service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Controller, his birth, all his fruitive activities, his lifespan, his mind, and his words are all factually perfect. So in this word, Nrinam is very important. There are many births, that a person, many other births besides human birth. That is what Narad Muni is mentioning here. But Narada Muni is especially talking about the human birth. So even within the human birth, there are gradations of our birth. And those who are advanced spiritually are called Aryans. There are different types of men. So those who are advanced are called Aryans. And among Aryans, those who are engaged in devotional service of the Lord are the most successful in life. And then so basically those other Aryans are the highest. Those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord are the topmost amongst all men, is what is explained here. So perfection by the Lord's service, the birth, activities, lifespan, mind, and words of humans are perfected by devotional service unto the Lord. That is the essence of the ninth verse. Verse 10. A civilized human being has three kinds of birth. So the first birth is by a human father and mother, and this birth is called birth by semen. The second birth is when one is initiated by the spiritual master, and this birth is called Savitra. The third is called Yagika, which takes birth when one is given the opportunity to worship Lord Vishnu, which is a Brahmin initiation in ISKCON, like in our Sampradaya. Despite the opportunities for attaining such birth, even if one gets the lifespan of a demigod, if one does not engage in the service of the Lord, everything is useless. Similarly, one's activities may be mundane or spiritual, but they are useless if they are not meant for satisfying the Lord. So the first janma, the first birth that we all that we are born by, it's called Shukra Janma, taking birth by seminal discharge. So animals also take birth in this way, and human beings are also taking birth in this way. And but if the parents, if the mother and father, if they perform Garbhadan Sanskar, then it is recommended by the scripture. It is Vedic, and it is pure. So Garbhadana Samskar, if it is, Prabhupada says, if it is not practiced amongst the higher caste, then the entire family becomes Shudra. And in this age of Kali, everybody is Shudra due to the absence of Garbhadan Samskar. And according to Pancharatrika system, one should, even though if we are born as Shudra, Pancharatrika, by the process of this Pancharatrika Vidhi, one can elevate themselves by following the Vidhi. So basically, by getting initiated by the spiritual master and following the four executive principles and chanting Hare Krishna Mantra. Sanatana Goswami, he mentions in Hari Bhakti Vilas that as bell pepper when mixed with mercury is transformed to gold, a person, even though not golden pure, can be transformed into a Brahmana simply by initiation process. So if one is initiated by a authorized sampradaya, then they become twice born. So in our Krishna Consciousness Society, unless one is twice initiated, first by chanting Hare Krishna and second by Gayatri Mantra, he is not allowed to enter the kitchen or DT room to execute duties. However, when one is elevated to the platform, he can worship the deity. So his previous birth doesn't matter. Even if one is born, it says here, even if one is born as a Chandala, if one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, he becomes the best of the Brahmanas. But even a Brahmana who is devoid of devotional service is on the same level as the lowest dog eater. So if a person is advanced in devotional service, it does not matter whether he's born as in Chandal family, he can become purified. Prahlad Maharaj also says the same thing, that no matter your birth, you should practice devotional service. So Narada Muni is basically saying that even if no matter what the birth is, no matter what the birth is, or how long the birth is, so that he mentions a couple of things here. But if one's activities, even the activities could be birth and lifespan and activities. They all are mundane if we are not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. So, so there are three, as I made a small table here to explain that verse a little bit. So basically there are three births: birth by semen, sacred thread, birth, and then initiation, yagika birth. And then the activities, the long life, Vedic education, all of this is basically useless until and unless we practice or we engage in devotional service of the Lord. So thank you very much. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I'll stop here. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.